This video is about the United States tariffs and the issues that no one talks about, such as who pays the tariffs, how other countries are circumventing the tariffs, why retaliatory tariffs and trade deficits are irrelevant, why big farms will also probably go out of business, why states like Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Arkansas, and many others will never recover, why tariffs will not reduce personal income taxes, why tariffs will increase the national debt and deficit, why tariffs cannot bring most manufacturing back to the United States. Okay, let's get started. Hello, my name is Todd, and welcome to my channel. This channel is going to be mostly about the economy, finance, money, and maybe a little bit about investments. And I'm going to try to make these subjects very easy to understand. Okay? Now, I know that a lot of people in their YouTube videos talk off the cuff, but me, I can't do that. In fact, I got notes that pretty much I'm going to read most of the time. I want to read them because I want to make sure I hit every particular point. Okay? Now, maybe in future videos, I may be able to read off the cuff and have everything flow a lot smoother, but right now for this first video, for these subjects, I'm gonna have to stick to my notes or the whole script. Now, if you have any questions in the future, just put them in the comment section and I'll try and make a video on it. Because I realize that if you have a question, a lot of other people will probably also have the same question. Okay, a little bit about me. MBA, UT Austin, 1995. Okay. Now this video, like I said before, is about the United States tariffs. And what's different about this video is that I cover subjects that are not really covered in a lot of videos that you'll watch, or at least I have seen on YouTube or TikTok about the United States tariffs. Now some have said that China or other countries are going to pay the tariffs. And others have noted that it is the United States importer who pays the tariffs. In reality, neither one is really correct. It is the United States consumer who pays the tariffs. Now, let me explain, all right? If I'm a manufacturer and my cost goes up by 50%, this means that it will cost me about 50% more to produce those products. Therefore, I want to pass that 50% on to, the consumer. Therefore, if I'm a manufacturer in China and the tariffs are costing me 50% more to make this product, I'm going to pass that 50% on to the importer in the United States. The importer in the United States, in turn, is going to pass that 50% on to the retailer, who is then going to pass that 50% on to the consumer. So when it comes to the supply chain, it's always the last person who's going to pay. The last person is going to be the consumer. So in reality, it's really the consumer who pays the tariffs, not China, not the United States. It's always going to be the consumer. So like I said, no matter where the 50% is added in the supply chain, it will always be the last person in the supply chain who actually is paying. Okay? And it's just that simple. How other countries are circumventing the tariffs. Now this part is very important for this whole section. Now every country in the world has people who have gone to the top universities, like Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Oxford, Cambridge. So they have people who work for them, for the government, who knows how to circumvent the tariffs. Now I do not know if Vietnam has done this on purpose, but I know this is one of the techniques that I'm going to mention that the United States and China have done over the years. In fact, the Bush administration did this in the early 2000s. They devalued the United States currency so that they could say they reduced the trade deficit. Because when they devalued the United States currency, people from other countries were able to afford more products from the United States. However, talking about trade deficit is just a policy ploy. Trade deficits really mean nothing, but they make the public think that you're really doing something relevant. I will explain later why trade deficits really means nothing in this video. Currently, it is 2025. I was in Vietnam in 2024. Back then I went to a restaurant and they had the menu posted over the internet. And the average meal, when I did the conversion rate, was about $10. Now it's 2025 and I looked at the same menu and the same meal now is costs only about $7. Now I do not know if Vietnam has really done this by devaluing their own currency, but it looks like they may have. So Trump put a 20 to 30% tariff on Vietnam. It looks like they devalued their currency by 20 to 30%, which means they have circumvented the tariffs or made the tariffs mean absolutely nothing. Therefore, shipping anything from Vietnam to the United States is going to cost as the same as it did before the tariffs. Why retaliatory tariffs and trade deficits are irrelevant. When Vietnam devalued their currency by 20-30%, produced indirectly a retaliatory tariff on the United States by 20-30%. This means anything shipped from the United States into Vietnam is going to cost the Vietnamese people or the Vietnamese government an extra 20-30%. For most countries, placing a tariff on goods coming from the United States into their country means absolutely nothing. This is because their income, particularly their disposable income, is a lot less than what people have in the United States. In countries like Thailand, the Philippines, and Vietnam, the average person makes about $10 a day. That's not $10 an hour, that's $10 a day. A Happy Meal here in the United States costs more than $10. You go to Burger King and get a Whopper, fries, and a drink. That's like $14. A good income in Thailand or the Philippines or Vietnam is about $500 a month. Basically what this means is anything that is made or manufactured in the United States, most people around the world cannot afford to buy it, which translates into trade deficits really mean nothing. Yes, I know that the United States sells a lot of agricultural products to other countries like corn, soybeans, wheat, but we heavily subsidize those particular products. If we do not subsidize those products, our farmers will not be able to compete on the world market. However, because of the trade tariffs, subsidies are now irrelevant and will not save the farmers. During the first Trump administration, Trump enacted a tariff policy, and because of that, our farmers lost a good deal of business from overseas customers, and that business never came back. Now with Trump's new tariff policy, all of the business that the farmers kept is gone. Our farmers here in the United States have no more business overseas. They cannot sell any product to any country overseas. China and all the other countries are buying their soybeans, corn, and wheat from other countries. And if anything is like it happened the first time, I mean that business is never going to come back. Now all of this could translate into even the big farms going out of business. Plus add to this the loss of agricultural jobs, businesses that rely or support these agricultural workers, such as restaurants, grocery stores, and many other types of businesses. Therefore, states like Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Arkansas, and many others who attain most of their tax revenue from agriculture and the businesses that support agricultural workers may never recover. Plus remember, you cannot get food stamps if you're not working. Thus, in many of these states and in many of those agricultural communities, the only jobs were agricultural employment or something related to agricultural work. Thus, no employment, no food stamps. No food stamps for the farmers who lost their businesses because they're not working. No food stamps for the agricultural workers who was working those farms. Which means that this is going to translate into these states becoming poorer and poorer. Which is going to translate into the United States government is going to have to bail out these states and at the same time bail out the farmers year after year after year. Why tariffs will not reduce personal income taxes. It also been said that the tariffs are going to bring in so much money that's going to help reduce people's personal income tax or reduce personal income tax altogether. Yes, before 1920, the United States government received most of their tax revenue from the sale of alcohol, sales tax of alcohol, and also tariffs. But you have to remember, the United States is a different country now compared to was before 1920. Plus, you have to understand the United States government and the military was much different in the 1920 compared to what it is now. For example, a fighter jet now costs what, $40 million each? Back then they didn't have fighter jets. Plus, now our United States military is global. Back then our United States military and Navy was not global. So we didn't have all of the extra costs. So no matter how much tariffs you collect, you won't even be able to collect enough to cover the United States military. Why tariffs will increase our national debt and deficit. Tariffs are basically a consumption tax. This means that if the economy goes down, people spend less. Therefore, the government receives less in income. The loss of all these agricultural jobs is going to hurt the United States. Now the question becomes, what happens when the economy is doing poorly and people cut back and stop spending? Then the government is going to have to borrow money in order to meet its obligations. Therefore, in reality, the tariffs will not bring down the debt or the deficit. Now, as a side note, the debt is how much the government borrows. The deficit is the difference between how much tax revenue the government brings in and how much it has to spend out. So if the government is bringing in $8 and its expenditures are $10, the deficit is that gap of $2. Why tariffs cannot bring back most manufacturing jobs. It's been said that tariffs is going to help bring back a lot of manufacturing jobs here to America. That is not really correct. As I said before, the United States today is a lot different than it was back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, even the 1970s. We produce a lot more products than what we did way back then. Our supply chain, because of it, is now global, because there's a lot of products or raw materials that we cannot produce here in the United States that we use every day in our everyday lives. For example, rubber. Rubber we use for our car tires, for our bumpers, for like those storage containers that we get from Walmart and Amazon are made by Rubbermaid. We cannot grow rubber here in America. Rubber is mostly grown in Africa and also in Thailand. Another example is the oil that nail salon uses. A lot of those plants that you use for those oils and the perfumes and the cologne we cannot grow here in the United States. A lot of those plants are tropical. And yes, we can grow some of those plants in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, but because of hurricane season, we cannot grow those plants at a substantial level. Then you have personal care products, such as shampoos, hair gels, cologne, deodorant, and a perfume. Many of the raw materials that goes into those products, we cannot grow here within the United States. They have to come from other places. So there's a lot of products that we use in our everyday lives that we cannot produce the raw materials here in the United States. We have to get them from overseas. And therefore, a lot of things is going to have to come from overseas. A lot of the components and raw materials that we use in our smartphones, our cameras, our TVs, our remote controls can only come from, those raw materials can only come from overseas. We do not have those raw materials here in the United States. And that is the reason why most manufacturing is not going to come back to the United States. Even if Trump reduced the tariffs down to zero, all right, the labor costs to produce those products here is going to be outrageous. And most people are not going to be able to afford it. So to think that the tariffs are going to bring back manufacturing to the United States is absolutely ludicrous. I'm in this video here and just say that I hope this video helps you better understand why tariffs cannot achieve what has been described to you. Thank you.